The 1960s gave us some of the greatest rock songs ever recorded. But not all of them were hits. Tonight, we're counting down 13 incredible tracks that bombed on the charts but have since been recognized as masterpieces. These aren't just forgotten gems, they're songs that influenced generations of musicians who came after.
Number 9, number 9, number 9.
Number 13. Picture this. A British band forms in 1963, becomes known for their aggressive R&B sound and hair that scandalized parents everywhere. By 1968, they'd evolved into something completely different, creating what many consider the first rock opera, beating The Who's Tommy by several months. The Pretty Things, SF Sorrow is Born, 1968.
SF Sorrow is born. SF Sorrow is born.
The Pretty Things concept album, SF Sorrow, was a commercial disaster when it hit shelves in 1968. The album told the tragic story of Sebastian F. Sorrow, a man whose life spirals from industrial town boredom through war trauma to complete isolation. SF Sorrow is Born opens this epic tale with haunting acoustic guitar and Phil May's distinctive vocals. Released the same month as the Beatles' White Album, it was completely overshadowed.
Sorrow and his wife arrived before the sun had left.
Radio stations didn't know what to do with a song that required context for the rest of the album. The band was also broke, having to record under the pseudonym Electric Banana just to pay the bills. Critics dismissed it as pretentious, and the public ignored it entirely. Today, music historians recognize SF Sorrow as groundbreaking, a template that influenced everyone from David Bowie to the Flaming Lips.
SF Sorrow, SF Sorrow, SF Sorrow.
Number 12. Here's a riddle. What do you get when you take America's Golden Boys of Surf Rock, the band that gave us California Girls and Surfin' USA, and have them create their most ambitious, introspective work? Something the fans absolutely hated. The Beach Boys, I Just Wasn't Made for These Times, 1966. When Pet Sounds dropped in 1966, Beach Boys fans expected more sunny California vibes. Instead, they got Brian Wilson's deeply personal meditation on alienation and artistic isolation. I Just Wasn't Made for These Times was the album's most introspective moment. Wilson's confession that he felt out of step with the world around him. The song featured unconventional instruments for a Beach Boys track, a theremin creating eerie, otherworldly sounds, and complex harmonies that were light years beyond their earlier surf anthems. American radio largely ignored it, and it never charted as a single. Fans who wanted fun, fun, fun were baffled by lyrics about feeling like a stranger in your own time. The irony is devastating. Wilson was singing about being way out in front of his era, and he was absolutely right. Paul McCartney called Pet Sounds the album that inspired Sgt. Pepper's. Today, it's considered one of the most emotionally honest songs of the decade. Number 11. Sharp suits, perfect harmonies, and a string of hits that define the Mersey beat sound, this band epitomized 1960s British cool. Now imagine them releasing something so different that it confused everyone who heard it. The Zombies, Care of Cell 44, 1968.
We'll get to know each other for a second time.
The Zombies had already broken up when Odyssey and Oracle was released in 1968, which explains why this masterpiece was initially ignored. Care of Cell 44 tells the story of a man writing to his imprisoned girlfriend, but Rod Argent's baroque pop arrangement made it sound like a love letter set to a chamber orchestra. The song's complex time signatures, layered harmonies, and Colin Blunstone's ethereal vocals were unlike anything on radio in 1968. It was too sophisticated for Top 40.
It's gonna be good to have you back again with me.
Too pop for the emerging underground rock scene, The band wasn't even together to promote it. They disbanded months earlier, convinced their career was over. Record stores didn't know how to categorize it. Was it pop, rock, classical? The confusion killed any chance of radio play. Today, Care of Cell 44 is studied in music schools as a perfect example of baroque pop, influencing everyone from Vampire Weekend to Fleet Foxes.
Come up and fetch you, saved up for the trip and money.
Number 10. A teenager who played every instrument, produced his own recordings, and created an entire album by himself in a garage studio. This songwriter could have been Paul McCartney's equal. The music industry delayed his album so long that by the time it was released, nobody cared. Emitt Rhodes, Really Wanted You, 1970.
'Cause I really wanted you. Yes, I really wanted you.
Technically released in 1970, Really Wanted You was recorded in the late 1960s by a young man who'd already been called the one-man Beatles. Emitt Rhodes had crafted perfect pop songs in his home studio, layering guitars, vocals, and drums with the precision of a master craftsman. The song showcased Rhodes' incredible melodic sense, soaring harmonies, intricate guitar work, and a vulnerability that made Paul McCartney sound cynical by comparison. But ABC Dunhill Records sat on the album for over a year, missing the moment when Rhodes could have been the next big thing.
Yes, I really wanted you.
By the time it was finally released, the music landscape had shifted toward heavier rock. Rhodes' delicate pop sensibilities seemed out of step with the times. The album sold poorly, and Rhodes retreated from the music business, bitter and disillusioned. Decades later, Elliott Smith would cite Rhodes as a major influence.
Well, I needed someone. Tell me who came along.
Number 9. Raw, dangerous, and completely uncompromising, this band started as America's answer to the Rolling Stones. By 1969, they'd evolved into something even more extreme, the godfathers of punk rock, a full decade before anyone knew what punk was. The Stooges, I Wanna Be Your Dog, 1969. When the Stooges released their debut album in 1969, rock critics didn't know what hit them. I Wanna Be Your Dog was 3 minutes of primal aggression. Iggy Pop's snarling vocals over a hypnotic repetitive riff that sounded like nothing else on the radio. The song was too primitive for progressive rock fans, too weird for mainstream audiences, and too radically unconventional for its day for anyone to understand. Radio stations refused to play it, the lyrics were too sexual, the sound too abrasive. Even underground FM stations largely ignored it. Record stores didn't know where to put it. It wasn't blues rock like Led Zeppelin, wasn't psychedelic like Pink Floyd, wasn't folk rock like Crosby, Stills and Nash. It was something entirely new and entirely unwelcome. The album bombed commercially and the Stooges were dropped by their label. But that 3-chord riff and Iggy's animalistic howl would echo through the decades, inspiring the Sex Pistols, the Ramones, and every punk band that followed. Number 8. Longer hair, wilder behavior, and a sound so raw it made the Stones look polished. This British band was considered more dangerous than the Rolling Stones in 1964. By 1968, they'd created something that predicted punk rock by nearly a decade. The Pretty Things, Defecting Gray, 1967.
Night sky hangs in blackness.
Before their rock opera phase, the Pretty Things released Defecting Gray, a song so heavy and aggressive it sounded like it came from 1977, not 1967. The track featured crushing guitar riffs, pounding drums, and lyrics that pushed boundaries in ways that made censors nervous. The song's homoerotic undertones were revolutionary for 1967, but they also made it impossible to promote.
Talking about your life and mine.
Radio stations wouldn't touch it, and even the band's label was uncomfortable with its content. The production was deliberately raw and unpolished, making it sound amateurish compared to the increasingly sophisticated recordings of their contemporaries. Critics dismissed it as noise. Fans who expected more conventional rock were confused. The song disappeared without a trace, buried beneath the avalanche of more accessible releases from 1967's Summer of Love. But listen to it today, and you'll hear the DNA of punk rock. The attitude, the aggression, the complete rejection of musical politeness. Number 6. For Your Love, Heartful of Soul, Over, Under, Sideways, Down. This band gave us some of the most beloved songs of the British invasion. By 1968, they'd evolved into something completely different. Psychedelic pioneers whose experiments were too strange for mainstream success. The Yardbirds, Glimpses, 1968. The Yardbirds' Glimpses was less a song than a sonic experiment. 10 minutes of tape loops, backwards recordings, and sound effects that created an otherworldly atmosphere. It was the band's attempt to push rock music into completely uncharted territory. The track featured no conventional song structure, no chorus, no verses, just an evolving soundscape that moved through different moods and textures. Jimmy Page, who would soon form Led Zeppelin, used the studio as an instrument. Creating sounds that wouldn't be heard in mainstream rock for another decade. Radio stations had no idea what to do with it. It was too long, too weird, and too experimental. Even progressive rock fans found it impenetrable. The song was buried on the B-side of a single and quickly forgotten. But Glimpses was a trailblazer, foreshadowing the ambient explorations of Brian Eno and the experimental rock of bands like Sonic Youth. Number 5. 4 actors hired to be a fake rock group for a TV show. This band started as a joke. By 1968, they were tired of being dismissed as manufactured pop and decided to create something genuinely artistic and completely uncommercial. The Monkees, Daily Nightly, 1967. Daily Nightly was the Monkees' attempt to prove they were real musicians, not just TV personalities. Michael Nesmith wrote and produced the track, which featured one of the first uses of a Moog synthesizer on a rock record, creating an eerie, futuristic sound that was unlike anything in their catalog. The song's lyrics dealt with media manipulation and the Vietnam War, heavy topics for a band known for bubblegum pop. The experimental production with its backwards vocals and electronic effects confused fans who expected I'm a Believer or Last Train to Clarksville. Radio stations ignored it completely. It was too weird for Top 40, too associated with the Monkees for underground credibility. The band's teen audience didn't understand it, and serious rock fans refused to take the Monkees seriously, regardless of what they recorded. But Daily Nightly was actually a groundbreaking piece of electronic rock, predicting the synthesizer-heavy music of the 1970s and 1980s. Number 4. Perfect harmonies, jangly guitars, and songs that captured the optimism of the mid-1960s. This band epitomized California sunshine. By 1968, they'd created something much darker and more complex, confusing fans who wanted more of their earlier hits. The Byrds, Wasn't Born to Follow, 1968.
I wasn't born to follow.
The Byrds, Wasn't Born to Follow came from their country rock phase, when the band was experimenting with pedal steel guitar and more rootsy sounds. Written by Jerry Goffin and Carole King, the song featured a driving rhythm and lyrics about independence and nonconformity. The problem was timing. By 1968, the Byrds' audience expected either their early folk rock sound or their recent psychedelic experiments. This country-influenced direction satisfied neither camp.
Think I'm ready.
Folk rock fans found it too commercial, while country fans weren't interested in a band associated with the hippie movement. Radio play was minimal. The song was too country for rock stations, too rock for country stations. It peaked at a disappointing number 84 on the charts, one of the Byrds' worst showings. But Wasn't Born to Follow was actually ahead of its time, predicting the country rock explosion that would make stars of the Eagles and Poco in the 1970s. Number 3. Raw power and authenticity that could match the Rolling Stones. This British blues band featured a guitarist considered one of the finest blues players in England, a rock-solid rhythm section, and a singer with a voice that could convey both tenderness and rage. So, why didn't anyone buy their records? Fleetwood Mac, Oh Well, 1969.
Oh well.
Before they became the soft rock superstars of Rumors, Fleetwood Mac was a hard-driving blues band led by Peter Green, one of the most gifted guitarists of his generation. Oh Well showcased both sides of the band, a gentle acoustic opening that exploded into a crushing electric blues workout. The song's two-part structure confused radio programmers. The acoustic section was too mellow for rock stations, while the electric section was too heavy for pop radio. At nearly 3 minutes, it was also too long for most stations' playlists.
Pretty and my legs are thin, but don't ask me what I think of you, I might not give the answer.
The band's blues purist image didn't help. They were seen as too serious, too authentic for mainstream success. American audiences didn't know what to make of them. They weren't as flashy as Led Zeppelin, weren't as dangerous as the Rolling Stones, weren't as experimental as Cream. Oh Well peaked at number 55 in the US, a disappointing showing for such a powerful song. But it was actually a perfect fusion of acoustic folk and electric blues, predicting the dynamic shifts that would become a staple of 1970s rock.
I knew he'd understand, he said stick by me and I'll be your guiding hand.
Number 2. Bob Dylan's backing group evolved into one of the most influential roots rock bands of all time, creating music that was simultaneously ancient and futuristic. Their 1968 debut was so different from everything else happening in rock that most people didn't know how to process it. The band, Chest Fever, 1968. The band's music from Big Pink was recorded while the rest of rock was going psychedelic. But these 5 musicians were looking backward, drawing from American folk, country, and R&B traditions. Chest Fever was the album's most complex track, featuring Garth Hudson's swirling organ and a structure that defied conventional song formats. The song's mysterious lyrics and unconventional arrangement confused listeners, expecting either psychedelic experimentation or traditional rock songs. It was too weird for mainstream radio, too rootsy for the underground scene. The band's deliberately anti-flashy approach seemed almost perverse in an era of musical exhibitionism. Critics praised the album, but radio ignored it. Chest Fever was too long at over 4 minutes, too complex for easy listening. The song's gospel-influenced organ work and cryptic lyrics about fever dreams didn't fit any established radio format. But the band was creating something entirely new, Americana, before anyone knew what to call it. Today, Chest Fever is recognized as a cornerstone of roots rock, influencing everyone from Wilco to My Morning Jacket. Number 1. What happens when you take the most innovative band of the 1960s, give them unlimited studio time and budget, and let them create whatever they want? You get something so experimental that even their most devoted fans couldn't understand it. The Beatles, Revolution 9, 1968.
Number 9, number 9, number 9.
At 8 minutes and 22 seconds, Revolution 9 was unlike anything the Beatles had ever recorded, or that anyone had ever recorded for that matter. John Lennon and Yoko Ono created this avant-garde sound collage using tape loops, backwards recordings, and fragments of classical music, creating what Lennon called the music of the future. The track featured no melody, no rhythm, no conventional song structure, just an evolving tapestry of sounds that included everything from orchestral snippets to crowd noise to Lennon repeating "Number 9, number 9," like a mantra.
Number 9, number 9, number 9.
It was pure experimental art, pushing the boundaries of what could be considered music. Radio stations refused to play it. Fans were baffled and angry. This wasn't the Beatles they knew and loved. Even within the band, there was resistance. Paul McCartney later admitted he wasn't entirely comfortable with it, and George Martin, their producer, called it a waste of time. The track was widely criticized as self-indulgent nonsense, proof that the Beatles had lost their way. But Revolution 9 was actually decades ahead of its time, predicting the ambient and electronic music that would emerge in the 1970s and beyond. Today, it's studied as a groundbreaking piece of sound art that showed the Beatles weren't just pop stars. They were true artistic pioneers. These 13 songs prove that commercial failure doesn't mean artistic failure. Sometimes the best music is the music that takes time to find its audience. Which of these forgotten classics surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below.